a mother's atonement after the birth of a man-child. Our text is in Leviticus chapter 12, verse 1 through 8. It reads as thus: And spake unto Moshe, saying, if a woman have conceived seed and born a man-child, then she shall be unclean 7 days. According to the days of the separation of her infirmity, shall she be unclean. And in the 8th day, the flesh of his foreskin shall be circumcised. And she shall then continue in the blood of her purifying 33 days. She shall touch no hallowed thing, nor come into the sanctuary until the days of her purifying be fulfilled. But if she bear a maid child, then she shall be unclean 2 weeks, as in her separation. And she shall continue in the blood of her purifying 66 days, 66 days. And when the days of her purifying are fulfilled for a son or for a daughter, she shall bring a lamb of the first year for a burnt offering, a young pigeon or a turtle dove for a sin offering unto the door of the tabernacle of the congregation unto the priest, who shall offer it before Yah and make an atonement for her. And she shall be cleansed from the issue of her blood. This is the law for her that hath borne a male or a female. And if she be not able to bring a lamb, then she shall bring 2 turtles, doves, or 2 young pigeons, the one for the burnt offering and the other for a sin offering. And the priest shall make an atonement for her, and she shall be cleansed. Again, our topic, a mother's atonement after the birth of a child. After reading this text, the question of this law immediately comes to our mind. And that is, why must there be an atonement for sin and a ceremony for the atonement of sin for the woman who just delivered a baby? Why is there sin for a married woman to give birth to a baby by her husband? And why must she atone for it? That's a question that immediately comes to our attention. And as we investigate, we notice an answer may be related to what we read in Psalms number 51, Psalms chapter 51, verse 5, which speaks of childbirth. In Psalms 51, verse 5, it says, behold, I was shapen in iniquity, and in sin did my mother conceive me. The psalmist is saying that even the conception and prenatal development of the fetus is of sin. So again, the question is, why? Certainly, one of the most innocent, seemingly, aspects of life is a mother giving birth to her child. And certainly, we wonder what's wrong with this in regards to a mother and her husband having a baby. Why must there be sin sacrifice? And why does the psalmist say in Psalm 51:5, behold, I was shapen in iniquity, and in sin did my mother conceive me? Evidently, Yah's original order for the process and procedure of human conception and birth was altered by sin in the Garden of Eden when Adam and Eve disobeyed and ate the fruit of the tree of good and evil. This meant that any offspring that they would produce would now come into the world with the compulsion to sin. In essence, sin came into the world as a spiritual genetic birth defect. So the psalmist says, behold, I was shapen in iniquity, and in sin did my mother conceive me. As a result, though Yah had told man to be fruitful and multiply, he nonetheless commands here in Leviticus 12 that there must be an atonement ceremony for sin for the mother each time a woman has a baby. Now, as a grandfather-to-be who has had the pleasure to look at my own little grandson forming in the womb of his mother through the ultrasound pictures, and I'm so proud and so happy. He's such a handsome little fellow with big, strong arms and a big head that he got from his granddaddy, and all of the ingredients to make a wonderful, nice little boy. I'm gradually we can see these things. We used to not be able to see this. And as I looked at this little boy, it dawned on me, as innocent and precious as he is, he's got sin already growing in him, passed down from his granddad, me. Because I know, just like David said, I too was shapen in iniquity, and in sin did my mother conceive me. So the reason for the atonement ceremony was so that the mother would be ritually clean to worship at the sanctuary, at the temple. And that this is one aspect of the answer to this question, because in the cleanliness laws of the Torah, anytime a woman had a feminine issue of blood, whether for regular monthly cycles or for sickness, reasons like sickness, or even the monthly cycles, or in this case, from giving birth, women would be ritually unclean from entering into the sanctuary presence of Yah. In Leviticus chapter 15, verse 19, when a woman has a regular monthly cycle, she was ritually unclean for 7 days. Verse 19 of Leviticus 15 says, and if a woman have an issue, and her issue in her flesh be blood, she shall be put apart 7 days, and whosoever toucheth her shall be unclean until the evening. Now, these cleanliness laws, as that, make you wonder, well, if it's a natural cycle, uh, what makes it then unclean? And mind you, me, I would certainly not believe that, though it's speaking here specifically of the sanctuary temple in Jerusalem, but I certainly, even though we don't meet in person and we meet on virtual Zoom network, nonetheless, if we were meeting in person and it was that time of month, I would certainly hope, unless their conscience bothered them, that that would not be an issue for why someone might not come to worship for Shabbat. Again, these cleanliness laws revolved around the temple in Jerusalem. If the places where we would meet in person, and there was a gathering, that those places, none of them are the temple sanctuary. And so as such, unless it's bothering the individual's conscience not to be there, I would hope that would not interfere with their attendance to that service. And the thing about it is these are ceremonial ritual laws for the temple and the sanctuary. Now we know the saying, cleanliness is the next thing to godliness, but I'll go a step further. Cleanliness is godliness. And of course, hygiene and those kind of issues for men and women, we should do the best we can when we come into the presence of Yah and worship with others as best we can. But even with that said, this law should not be interpreted to mean that the individual can't come to worship. Now, there's a way some congregations are set up. I remember among the Beta Israel in Ethiopia, they have a very exacting rule of law about females after they have babies. And when they're in their monthly period, they make a special cabin. This is what they used to do in Ethiopia. They don't do this now that they're mostly living in the state of Israel now. But they used to have, when I would visit them in Ethiopia, before they all got airlifted to Israel, they used to have a special hut. They lived in huts up in the highlands of Ethiopia. They'd have a hut where all the sisters that time of month or had a baby, they would all go there and it'd be like a girls' fraternity. Those sisters would have a good time. The husbands would have to do all the cooking and cleaning and taking care of the babies. And the sisters had a break and enjoyed each other's company and fellowship time and vacation. So that was the good thing about it. And yet we know in reality, and I have a dear elder friend, he has a congregation here in Chicago, a very big congregation, probably the biggest congregation than even all of the Black churches in Chicago. And he made a very good point. His point was, well, this is the individual's choice when it comes to this cleanliness law. When that woman is in that time of nidah, which is the Hebrew word for the monthly cycle, nidah, it's up to them whether to come or not. Because we live in a society where you just can't keep up with monitoring those kind of things or regulating those kind of things. So this then becomes an issue of conscience. In my conscience, I in observing this law, without violating this law, I don't see anything in this law that just means terms of gatherings. Now it says if someone comes in contact with the individual, that they would be unclean for a day. That is, they would have to bathe by sundown, they would be ritually clean. This is what we call one track of the cleanliness laws is what we call common cleanliness, where you bathe and by evening you're clean from any kinds of contact with someone in a number of unclean situations, that some of which are natural to human day-to-day living, like a man with his wife, and they would bathe after that and be unclean until the evening. All right, but again, when it comes to application into the Body of Messiah Fellowship Network, I've seen some congregations where they will have a set aside place in the meeting place for sisters that are going through that time of the month. And they would stay in that section with each other, but they would still be there at worship. There's all kind of methods and means you see Jewish people do, where the women will have that certain section of the synagogue and they will sit on a certain kind of pillow or mat while they sit in a pew, which is to indicate, it's that time of the month. So there's a number of things some people do out of a courtesy to others and so forth. And which is fine. This is fine. Yet we know in day-to-day living, we work in jobs, offices, we sit at chairs and desks. We don't know who's been sitting there and what's been going on with them. So again, these are issues that are common cleanliness issues. All of us should bathe every day. That goes without saying. And the Israelite people were noted to be very clean people. The Israelites were really very, it's amazing because they didn't know all the biological information that we know now about bacteria and other things like that. But these cleanliness laws, it's as though Yah is giving instructions about things like what we know now, which the people didn't know at that time, but of course Yah knows. And he's telling Israel certain things that's working out for the best for them in terms of hygiene and in terms of health matters. And it's amazing, even the kind of food we're to eat and not eat. And the reasons why we're finding out now that he don't want you to eat pork because somebody can take a piece of pork, uncooked pork, and put some Coca-Cola on it, and then in a day or two, you're gonna see worms coming up out of it. Y'all don't want his people eating worms. So there are things like that Yah was always ahead of the Israelites. But the Israelites were known as a very clean people with their hygiene. And these laws, like for the monthly cycle, anybody come in contact with someone going through that, it just means that they just had to take a bath that day and be clean by the evening. Or a man with his wife, he has to take a bath that day. And she has to take a bath that day, immediately after that relationship. This is all just common sense. All right, but now the issue of a woman having a baby, the issue of blood that comes from that, it's something that goes longer than the monthly cycle. I know some people would say, well, You a man, you shouldn't be talking about all this. This is female talk, woman to woman talk. Well, that would be like saying that certain parts of the scripture that sisters can't read because it only pertain to men. Well, scriptures for all of us to read and study and explain and understand. Because there's usually a spiritual meaning behind it. In Leviticus 15, verse 25, it states that if a woman has a blood flow beyond the regular monthly cycle, this is what it says, verse 19. It says, and if a woman have an issue in her, and her issue in her flesh be blood, she shall be put apart 7 days. And whosoever toucheth her shall be unclean until the evening. All right, so in Leviticus 15:25, it states that if a woman has a blood flow beyond the regular monthly cycle period of time, then this is a medical reason or sickness that will keep this individual ritually unclean from worship at the sanctuary temple indefinitely until the flow stops. Now, this is for somebody having a health problem that could create blood flow. And that's beyond the monthly cycle. And in Leviticus 15:25, it says, if a woman have an issue of her blood many days out of the time of her separation, or if it run beyond the time of her separation, all the days of the issue of her uncleanliness shall be as the days of her separation. She shall be unclean. But verse 28 says in Leviticus 15, verse 28 says, when the flow stops, she must go through a procedure and ceremony for being ritually clean. Verse 28, but if she be cleansed of her issue, then she shall number to herself 7 days. And after that, she shall be clean. And on the 8th day, she shall take unto her 2 turtles or 2 young pigeons and bring them unto the priest to the door of the tabernacle of the congregation. And the priest shall offer the one for a sin offering and the other for a burnt offering. And the priest shall make an atonement for her before Yah for the issue of her uncleanness. Thus shall you separate the children of Israel from their uncleanness, that they die not in their uncleanness when they defile my tabernacle that is among them. So these laws as such that have a ceremony, an instruction for a ceremony for atonement after that issue has stopped, either by a medical illness or either by the result of childbirth, there would be a ceremony to atone for that flow of blood. Now, I do not see any ceremonies that were done when a woman has her monthly cycle. That is, she's considered ritually unclean to come into the temple, into the sanctuary. That place, that was the actual physical temple. But after that 7-day period is over, I don't see any ceremonies that she had to do after that. But for those issues of blood beyond the monthly cycle, there's atonement ceremonies. We know in Matthew chapter 9, verse 20 through 22, is the account of Yeshua healing a woman who had the sickness of an issue of blood. In verse 20 in Matthew chapter 9 says, and behold, a woman which was diseased with an issue of blood 12 years came behind him and touched the hem of his garment. But she said within herself, if I may but touch this garment, I shall be whole. But Yeshua turned him about, and when he saw her, he said, daughter, be of good comfort. Thy faith have made thee whole. And the woman was made whole. So likewise in Leviticus 12, it states that due to the blood flow from the birthing process that women naturally endure, they likewise had to go through a process and ceremony for atonement before they would be ritually pure to enter the temple for worship. In Luke chapter 2, verse 22, is shown the observance of this law described in Leviticus 12. When Mary went through this ceremony when she gave birth to Yeshua, after those days of purification had ended, as described in Leviticus. It says, verse 22, and when the days of her purification, according to the law of Moshe, was accomplished, they brought him to Jerusalem to present him to Yahweh, as it is written in the Torah of Yah. Every male that openeth the womb shall be called Kodesh to Yahweh. Hallelujah. I got a little grandson that's going to be the first to open his mother's womb. And that means he's going to be set apart unto Yah. I know it, and I believe it. And so is the case here in Yeshua's birth. He was Mary's firstborn boy. And this child is set apart to Yah. And so there was a ceremony in the time when the woman would be cleansed, that she would then do a presentation, devotion of that firstborn. Verse 24 of Luke 2 says, well, and to offer a sacrifice according to that which is the law of Yahweh, a pair of turtle doves or 2 young pigeons. And we see in Luke that Mary and Joseph observed this law of the birth of a man-child by performing what's required in the law of Moses in Leviticus chapter 12. And when they had performed all these things according to the law of Moses, or to the law of Yahweh, verse 39 says, of chapter 2 of Luke, and when they had performed all things according to the law of Yah, they returned unto Galilee to their own city of Nazareth. So Mary and Joseph observed the law of Moses as commanded in Leviticus 12, after she gave birth to Yeshua. Mary went through the atonement ceremony for the birthing of a man-child, the firstborn son. It's interesting as we look at this account in Luke chapter 2, after Mary went through the atonement ceremony described in Leviticus 12, after giving birth to Yeshua, that in this account in Luke chapter 2, we see that 2 prophets appeared who gave prophecies concerning Yeshua and the future for Israel's redemption. One of these prophets was a man, and the other prophet was a woman. One prophet was Simeon. We read in Luke chapter 2, verse 25 through 35, it says to him, "And behold, there was a man in Jerusalem whose name was Simeon, and the same man was just and devout, waiting for the consolation of Israel, and the Holy Ghost was upon him." Now, this is an elder that's waiting for better days to come for Israel. And it appears that somehow, some way, this ceremony of the woman's atonement that Mary and Joseph observed, and that's taught in Leviticus 12, that somehow this ceremony spiritually is symbolically a reference to Yah's teaching on the means of bringing better fortunes for the Israelites, bringing better consolations for us who have been as a woman in birth labor, waiting to be delivered from the magnitude of the curses and circumstances and misfortunes that we have endured for many days, as it said in Daniel 11:32, where we went through the flame, the sword. We went through captivity. And this has been for many days. And somehow this ceremony of this cleansing and atonement of the mother for the birth of a man-child, somehow there's a spiritual meaning to what this means for our future as the Israelite nation. Because Simeon was a man waiting for Yah to change the fortunes of the Israelite people. But there was going to be many days from Simeon's time down into your time. So this is an elder that was waiting, and he went into eternity never having seen the things that you are beginning to see. So we need to take to heart these ceremonies and rituals, not as pertaining to historical ceremonies, but as what they mean spiritually to you and I now, living in these latter days, as we have read in Daniel, that these ceremonies and teachings are written primarily for you who are living in the latter days, not just for the sheer practical application physically, but also for the prophetic meaning spiritually behind this, because we see Yah calls a prophet to show up at the time of this ceremony of Leviticus chapter 12 that Mary was doing in accordance with Leviticus 12. In verse 26 of chapter 2 of Luke, it says, because, and it was revealed unto him by the Holy Ghost that he should not see death before he had seen Yahweh's Messiah. Oh, hallelujah. Yah chose the practice of the ceremony in Leviticus 12 to allow this old prophet to see the Messiah, Yahshua, in all of it. Verse 27, it says, and he, Simeon, came by the Spirit unto the temple. And when the parents brought in the child, Yahshua, to do for him after the custom of the Torah. This elder is being led by the Holy Spirit to come at the time of the sanctuary ceremony for the birth of the man-child. That Simeon, it says in verse 28, then took he him up in his arms. That is, he took up this little baby. And he blessed Elohim and said, Yahweh, Now lettest thou thy servant depart in peace, according to thine word. Oh, hallelujah. The fact that this is a ceremony for the atonement of forgiveness by this birth. Nonetheless, this birth will be for salvation from sin and iniquity in the blessed being and person of our Master Yahshua. And Simeon realized this. He said, now, O Yah, let thy servant depart in peace, according to thine word. Mine eyes have seen thy salvation, because at the birth of this child, the angel had told Mary and Joseph they were to name this child Yahshua, for he shall be salvation for the sins of his people, Israel. And Simeon says in verse 30, for mine eyes have seen thy salvation. That is, he had to come to this atonement ceremony of the firstborn man-child to see Yah's salvation. So this is important because it's an atonement ceremony for sin. And Yah is saying when Israel bursts forth as a nation again, there will have to be an atonement ceremony where he said in the prophet Ezekiel chapter 36, I will sprinkle clean water over you. I'll put my spirit in you that you'll walk in my statutes, my laws, and my commandment. I'll give you a new heart. I'll take away that stony, stubborn heart and give you a heart of flesh that will bend according to my will. And I'll put my laws and statutes in your heart. Simeon caught this vision and was so happy in the presence of this child, Messiah, Yahshua, that he continues on to say in verse 31, verse 30, mine eyes have seen thy salvation, which thou hast prepared before the face of all people, a light to lighten the Gentiles and the glory of thy people, Israel. Oh, hallelujah. This brother got caught up in the Ruach through the time of this observance of the ceremony in Leviticus chapter 11. Verse 33 says, and Joseph and the baby's mother Mary, they marveled at those things which were spoken of him. This was Mary's child, and this was Joseph's stepchild. But Yah's letting them know that this child is more than just their steps for Joseph as a stepchild, and that this child is more to Mary than just her firstborn. This child is the Savior and salvation for all mankind. When we pick up at verse 33, and Joseph and his mother marveled at those things which were spoken of him. Verse 34, Simeon is not through yet. Shalom, Ema, Abigail. We're in Luke chapter 2, verse 34.
Okay, thank you. Shalom. Sorry I'm late.
Shalom. No problem. And Simeon blessed them and said unto Mary, his mother, behold, this child is set for the fall and rising again of many in Israel, and for a sign which shall be spoken against. Yes, a sword shall pierce through thy soul also, that the thoughts of many hearts may be revealed. This child is the one that Isaiah said, for behold, a child is born unto us. A son is given. Simeon says, a sword shall pierce through him. For they would hang him on a tree for you and me. And they pierced his side. And we know that he died. and said, Abba, forgive them. They know not what they do. But he died that the thoughts of many hearts would be revealed according to the prophecy of Simeon. And from this, Simeon knows his days to depart had come. You see, beloved, Simeon could see what was coming, but he wouldn't live long enough to see the consolation of Israel, because Israel would execute Yeshua, pierce him and kill him through the Romans. And Jerusalem would be destroyed. And we went into exile and captivity, as Daniel 11:32 says, for these many days. We're still in captivity. Yet, Simeon had the hope to wait, as Job said, until my change comes. Wait, as the spiritual that Sam Cooke saying is going to come, when that change is going to come. Now, the second prophet was actually a prophetess that bear witness to these things at the time of the ceremony of this man-child that was commanded in Leviticus 12. The second prophetess was a woman called Anna, the prophetess, who was spoken of in Luke chapter 2, verse 36 through 38, which states, verse 36, and there was one Anna, a prophetess, the daughter of Phanuel of the tribe of Asher. She was of a great age and had lived with her husband 7 years from her virginity. And she was a widow of about 84 years. She's about 84 years old. She departed not from the temple, but served Elohim with fastings and prayers day and night. You know, we got some prayer warriors among us. People like Ima, Kalila. We got prayer warriors that fast and pray day and night. We got elders like Elder Yehuda. We got some prayer warriors here. This is where the invocation of the power of Yah's presence come, because in this case, both these prophets and Anna now come into the presence of the anointed one, Yeshua himself. Now, this sister had been praying and fasting ever since she had been a widow. She had been married 7 years. So that means this woman has more than likely been praying and fasting and worshiping at the temple for nearly about 70 years. And lo and behold, the Messiah, the answer and the consolation for Israel was there. This sister was from one of the lost tribes of Israel, the tribe of Asher, one of the 10 lost tribes. She wasn't from Judah. So it's a rare glimpse that there was some Israelites from some of the other tribes that supposedly were lost, that somehow made it back to Judah and Jerusalem. She was one of those. So she was of the tribe of Asher. And she was a prophetess, pretty much similar, like there was another prophetess from one of the northern tribes. Her name was Deborah. Deborah, who was a prophetess and a judge. And the thing is, these prophetesses are so needed, and we need prophets and prophetesses, for the time is late. And she began to bear witness about who this baby really is, whose mother had come to fulfill the law of Moses, according to what was given in Leviticus chapter 12. Verse 38 says regarding Anna, she coming in that instant gave thanks likewise unto Yahweh and spoke of him to all them that looked for redemption in Jerusalem. Oh, hallelujah. She bare witness to people that knew a better day was coming for the Israelites. But Yahshua would bear witness years later in Luke 21:24 that you would be slain by the sword and you would be carried away captive among all nations. And Jerusalem will be trodden of the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles will be fulfilled. And that trotting down continues to this day, and our captivity continues to this day. Yet this woman is so excited 2,000 years ago, looking for those things that were going to come thousands of years past that time. Beloved, shouldn't we be even that much more excited, being this close to that time, according to the prophecies? Oh, hallelujah. Both of these prophecies, both from Simeon and from Anna, came as Mary performed the atonement ceremony of Leviticus 12. Let us now review these things from a latter-day prophetic understanding for this time. Isaiah 66, verse 7 through 8 says, before she travailed, she brought forth. Before her pain came, she was delivered of a man-child. Who have heard such a thing? Who have seen such things? Shall the earth be made to bring forth in one day? Or shall a nation be born at once? For as soon as Zion travailed, she brought forth her children. Shall I bring to the birth and not cause to bring forth, saith Yah? Shall I cause to bring forth and shut the womb, saith thy Elohim? In Isaiah chapter 66, verse 7 and 8, there are two births. There's the birth of a man-child without pain, as described in Isaiah 66, verse 7, where it says, before she travailed, she brought forth. Before her pain came, she was delivered of a man-child. Now, we're not given details as pertaining to the condition of Mary when she gave birth to Yeshua. And no, he was not born 2 days ago on December 25th. That wasn't his birthday. But clearly, verse 7 is talking about the birth of Yeshua here in chapter 66, verse 7. And from this, though there's not an explicit witness of this in the narratives of the gospel, in Matthew, Mark, or Luke, nonetheless, it can be inferred from what we read here in verse 7 that not only was the conception of Mary having conceived as a virgin, but it appears to be from this verse, miraculously, she didn't have any pain either when she gave birth to Yeshua. All right. So before she travailed, she brought forth. Before her pain came, she was delivered of a man-child. This is clearly referring to the birth of Yeshua. That's one birth in the prophecy of Isaiah 66, verse 7 through 8. But Isaiah 66, verse 8 describes also a painful birth. Who have heard such a thing? Who have seen such things? Shall the earth be made to bring forth in one day? Or shall a nation be born at once? For as soon as Zion travailed, she brought forth her children. This second birth in Isaiah 66, 8 is the birth of the Israelite nation. See, sometimes some may not understand what I mean when I say This is the Hebrew Israelite movement. At this point, that's basically what we are, though we know indigenously we are a nation, but we're not yet up and running and functioning as a nation. But right now, we're like the movement of the dry bones in the valley of the dry bones vision of Ezekiel in chapter 37, where the bones moved closer to each other and formed sinew and came together. So at this time, there's a movement of breast. Some call it an awakening. But it's Israelites drawing near. But yet, this is like the way in which a baby forms in its mother's womb. I had the pleasure to look at this little baby grandson. And I remember when I first saw him, you couldn't make out any distinguishable characteristics about him. Other than we could just say, well, it looked like he waved at us, but he didn't have a head, he didn't have a face. We just couldn't make out what he was. It looked almost like a triangle or something in his mother's womb. But we waited a little while longer. All of a sudden, this boy's head is out, his face is out, his arms, and we can make him out. He looks like a person now. You see, and as we come closer together as Israelite people, Yah starts developing things around us as the way in which a mother's prenatal care and the child in her womb is developing and growing and forming to come forth out of his mother's womb. And so we see that the second birth in Isaiah 66:8 is the birth of the nation of Israel, which is at this time a movement that's awakening and moving around. Yeah, this little fellow moves around in his mother's womb. He causes her a lot of pain sometimes, but he's moving around. And it's just a wonder to be able to see these things. This all relates to Israel, our nation. So Isaiah 66 verse 8 is a birth with pain, whereas the birth in 66 verse 7 had no pain. So there's two births in Isaiah 66. One is the birth of Messiah that was without pain. The other was a birth that has pain in Isaiah 66 verse 8. We see also a contemporary of Isaiah called Micah, a contemporary prophet in the time of Isaiah. He too also describes two births as well in Micah chapter 5, verse 2 through 3. Micah likewise describes two births, just like that are described in Isaiah chapter 66, verse 7 through 8. Micah 5:2 describes the birth of Yeshua as described in Isaiah 66:7. Micah says in chapter 5, verse 2, but thou Bethlehem Ephrathah, though thou be little among the thousands of Yehudah, yet out of thee shall he come forth unto me, that is to be ruler in Israel, whose goings forth have been from of old, from everlasting. So that's the birth of the Messiah, Yeshua. He was born in Bethlehem. He wasn't born on December 25th, but he was born in Bethlehem. But also we see a second birth that Micah describes, a painful birth. Micah chapter 5, verse 3 also describes a painful birth, as is described in Isaiah 66, verse 8. Micah chapter 5, verse 3 says, therefore he will give them up until the time that she which travaileth have brought forth. Then the remnant of his brethren shall return unto the children of Israel. The painful birth here is clearly a representation of the captivity of you, the exiles of Zion in this Babylon America. You who are the people of Judah, whose mother city and capital is Jerusalem. Because we further read in Micah chapter 4, verse 10, it states, be in pain and labor to bring forth, O daughter of Zion, like a woman in birth labor, for now shalt thou go forth out of the city, and thou shalt dwell in the field, and thou shalt go even to Babylon. There shalt thou be delivered. There thou shalt give birth. There Yah shall redeem you from the hand of thy enemies. So according to Micah chapter 4, verse 10, this second birth that's described in Micah 5:3, this second birth that's described in Isaiah 66, verse 8, this second birth, according to Micah 4:10, is this second birth is to be delivered from our captivity in America. That from this captivity of America, we birth forth as a nation again, just like the birthing process of a baby. Revelation chapter 12, verses 1 through 2, and also verse 5 likewise states, verse 1 of chapter 12 of Revelation, and there appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars. That's Israel. All you have to do is read Joseph's vision and dream in Genesis chapter 38 or 37, where he describes a dream and a vision he had, where the moon was his mother, Rachel, the sun represented his father, Jacob, and the 12 stars, which he was one of them, represented the 12 tribes of Israel. So we see this woman here represents Israel in captivity, waiting to birth forth out of this captivity, to be a free, independent nation. And it's a painful process. We have to go through the sufferings and humiliations and oppressions of a Gentile world system that's opposed to our way of life or our identity as the Israelite people. Verse 2 says, and she being with child cried, travailing in birth and pain to be delivered. And then verse 5 says, and she brought forth a man child. A man child, just like described in Leviticus chapter 12. The birthing of a man child. And she brought forth a man child, which is described as the second birth in Isaiah 66, verse 8, which is the birthing forth of the nation of Israel. But it says she brought forth a man child who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron. And her child was called up unto Elohim and to his throne. Now, a lot of people say, well, this is the birth of Yeshua when they read this section. But see, when you read Isaiah 66, verse 7, Yeshua was born without pain. His birth was miraculous. Our birth as a nation is with pain. Our birth to be a nation comes through suffering and slavery and exile and the sword and fire and flame, through the fiery furnace of affliction, with pain. That's what Revelation 12 is describing in regards to us as the man child. So this isn't referring to Yeshua in Revelation 12:5. But Micah 5, verse 2 refers to the birth of Yeshua, and Isaiah 66:7 refers to the birth of Yeshua. But Isaiah 66, verse 8, and Micah chapter 4, verse 10, and Micah chapter 5, verse 3 describe a painful birth. That's our birthing forth as a nation. Now, one of the things about the birthing forth of us as a nation, as a man-child, we are also the bride of Messiah. Before he comes back to the earth, he wants his bride to be with him. In the place he said, I go away to prepare it for you in my Father's house. Well, his Father's house is in heaven. And that means before he returns, he's going to catch away his bride. I know some people want to call it the rapture, though that's not a word that's in the biblical text. And people get misunderstanding about it and misrepresent it. But see, when you read the Song of Solomon, the bride is not all the believers in Yeshua. I don't want to repeat that. The bride that we read about in chapter 14 of John, that's called also the man-child in Revelation 12:5, that's caught up to heaven. The bride is snatched up to heaven to the bridegroom. When you read the Song of Solomon, the bride says in verse 5, I am black and beautiful, O daughters of Jerusalem. The bride is black, and she comes from the captivity of exile of the children of Israel. When we birth forth as a nation, those in Messiah Yeshua will be designated as the bride. They will be called. This is not the rapture that you see people of these churches talk about. This is not that. Because when you read the prophecy in the book of Matthew, chapter 25, the parable of the 10 virgins, 5 were wise, 5 were foolish. It says, and when the bridegroom came, that's the Messiah. But in the Aramaic text, it says something else. It says, and when the bridegroom and the bride came. Now that means that when Yeshua comes back to the earth, his bride, the black and beautiful bride, the one that was despised and rejected by man, just as he was despised and rejected by man. When he spoke to his disciples that night in John 14, these were all Israelite people. And his fellowship was a congregation that's called his bride. Now, if anybody's in that body of that congregation, they're part of the bride. But you see, the modern day churches, they're not part of this because they don't follow the original structure, organization, and teachings of the congregation that Yeshua set up. They followed man-made denominations, man-made religion. But you, the bride, and you're the chaste virgin, like Mary. That is, you got the pure doctrine. This is the bride, and also called the man-child. It's caught up unto Elohim in verse 5 and to his throne. And then you can read the rest of Revelation 12. The rest of Israel has to flee into the wilderness. Wouldn't you rather flee up into heaven from the Antichrist rather than flee into the wilderness? For me, I want to make sure I'm on the bride side. I don't want to be going to the wilderness if I don't have to go. And so Revelation 12, verse 1 through 2, it speaks of our birthing forth out of this American Babylonian captivity, just like Isaiah 66, verse 8. And also Micah chapter 5, verse 3, and chapter 4, verse 10. In Revelation chapter 12, verse 5, our nation is called the man-child. Yeshua is the first man-child, as his mother performed the atonement ceremony as described in Leviticus 12. So to our mother, which is Zion, Jerusalem, must be cleansed. Currently, the Zionist state of Israel has defiled our mother city of Jerusalem. Gay pride parades all over the place, and pornography, and every lewd, unclean thing, and witchcraft. It's all over the place. It's unclean. But when we come back to reclaim Jerusalem, Isaiah chapter 4, verse 4 says, Yahweh will wash the filth and beautify Zion and cleanse Jerusalem of its bloodstains with the hot breath of fiery judgment. That means his judgment is coming on the government of the Zionist state of Israel to get that city ready for the bride and the bridegroom. In the New Living Translation, it says, the cleansing of Jerusalem is coming when we see the man-child nation birth forth as a nation again. So as we conclude the study of the cleansing of the mother of the man-child, we see that Jerusalem is our mother. That is our true motherland, Jerusalem. That is our true motherland. It is the mother of us all. But it needs atonement. We need to be birthed forth to reclaim our share and inheritance of Jerusalem. Hallelujah. May Yah add a blessing to the reading and the hearing of his word.